While everyone's logging on, we're just going over what's going on. We're here just a few minutes early, so why don't you go ahead, make their comment section, just blow it up for a little while. Tell us about your day, what's going on. The question that I would like to ask, if you would put it in the comment section below, the same question I was going to have last week is this. It's how do you sharpen your axe? When you think of the old logger, the man who would go out and chop down the trees in the forest with an axe, he would go out and many times they'd have competitions, and one guy would get out there, usually the young guy, think that the brute force, the strength is the way to go. And the other man who's been doing it a while usually goes off to the side after a few swings, and he sharpens his axe each time, and each hit of the axe, each strike, causes it to go deeper and deeper every time. And the person who wins, obviously, it's the one with the sharpest axe, the one who takes the time, even though it may seem like it's slower, to stand off to the side, get away from what seems to be chaos, and just sharpen the axe and then go back at it. So how do you sharpen your axe? In what way do you replenish yourself? That could be spiritually, physically, emotionally. We only have so much until we're depleted. So how do you sharpen your axe? How do you take the time, or how would you if you could? Because let me just say this. All of us can. Yeah. We have an excuse not to. But how do you, or how would you sharpen your axe? Take the time, get away. Do you have a place that you go to replenish yourself? A place that you pray? Maybe a place or something that you read, or some person that you hang around with? How do you sharpen your axe? How do you replenish yourself spiritually, emotionally, physically? So go ahead and put that in the comment section below. I hope this strikes some good conversation. As always, we want you to busy in the comment section. I'm going to try to monitor it tonight while Pastor gives the talk. Leads us along this path as we talk about the Black Swan, not the musical, not the production, but the Black Swan. We're going to talk about a couple different things. I don't have it here in front of me. I could bring it up. But anyways, it's going to be a good night. Mental axes, good education, the next 20 years, all those things are going to be topics of discussion for tonight. So how do you replenish yourself? Go ahead, put that in the comment section. It's good to see everyone here. Pastor, why don't you introduce yourself? Obviously, we're always glad to have you.
I'm so glad to be here. And I don't have my AirPod or whatever they call those things. I want to call it earbuds. But anyway, I'm just talking raw microphone. So I hope everybody can hear me. I am glad to be here. Had a great day. It was hot. I was outside most of the day. Getting hotter all the time, and just feels good to be inside. I'm wearing my favorite shirt, talking to, and I love doing what we're doing tonight. So it's a good day. I'm glad to be here. So thankful that I've been privileged to be able to spend time with everyone.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. If you would, fill up the comment section tonight. Keep us busy. I want to be able to monitor that. So I'm excited. Why don't we go ahead and get started? It is 8:02. We've got people logging on. It's 8:02. We're going to talk about several topics. We're going to limit it to an hour, as always. So, Pastor, why don't you go ahead and get us started on the very first topic for tonight?
All right. So the topic come up last week. Somebody, in fact, I think it was you, that asked, how do you sharpen your axe? And it wasn't a metaphor. I wasn't sure it was a metaphor or a literal. I'm like, oh, okay, it starts with a foul, But I'm not always the sharpest person, but I always have something to say, and I'm always thinking of stuff. So, and of course, I'm not the oldest guy in the room. I think I've seen a couple of older people than me. But the reason why I'm going to speak about this is because I'm passionate about staying sharp, and I want to. And I've seen people that didn't, and the repercussions and the problems it caused when we don't stay sharp. And I'm going to use that as a cliche, I guess, that covers a lot of different areas. When we don't stay healthy physically, healthy mentally, and healthy spiritually, we just cause problems, not only for ourselves, but others around us. And so we have to stay physically capable or physically active. We have to stay mentally active, and we have to stay spiritually active and growing. And so I'm going to answer it from my perspective And then, of course, I want you to throw in somebody's other ideas. But I think, as a synopsis, being that, and then I'm going to use the priorities that I used a few weeks ago. I live by those priorities. And so I spend every day, I spend time with the Lord, time praying, just time in the Word of God. And then I try, if possible, and most of the times it's possible, if you don't get distracted, to just spend time stopping and thinking about life. Lately, now that's the reason why in the past I've used my what we used to call windshield time. That time when you're just driving, or that time when you're on the lawnmower, or that time when you're on the tractor, and you can't do more than one thing. When you're doing that, you have to really pay attention. And so that really gives you an opportunity to think about things that you wouldn't normally think about, or dwell on things that you don't normally dwell on when you're busy. When you're busy, you don't have time to think. So I like windshield time. I like taking trips. I like to get on the lawnmower and just work around the yard for a couple hours. And I do that, of course, every week. Now I've got a garden, and I'll go out there. Now this is over and above my morning routine. I get up pretty early. I now I've got a little dog, but I take my dog. We go sit outside. I read my Bible and I pray. And sometimes, if I'm, of course, I'll stay inside, kneel down at the couch and pray wherever. But then I stop and I try, unless I have something on my schedule, I try to take 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, and just dwell on life, dwell on situations, dwell on things, and try to uh, resolve, I think, some issues by just thinking outside of the box. Because in our life, we're so busy, we really don't have time just to think. Well, I'm going to go on. That way I don't get stuck on all this stuff. But I also try to spend every day, I try to read. Sometimes, of course, this is over and above, again, my Bible reading and that kind of thing. But I've got my spiritual time, which is early morning until 8:30 in the morning. Then I go to the rest of my day, and I'll read, I'll study. I love to go to school, but when I'm not in school, I still enjoy taking time to just read. And so that's the way I keep my mental and spiritual act sharpened. Then on the physical side, of course, well, you've got to stay healthy. If and life is like this. I would throw this out there just as a holistic. I would say a holistic person is what I would consider myself. Your body, your mind, and your spirit are all kind of. And I'm not trying to do the Holy Trinity or anything, but we're all kind of one. And if our body is weak, then it hurts our mind and our spirit. Same thing with our mind or our spirit. So staying physically active, I learned the hard way. This is back 5 years ago when I finally broke some habits. I was so busy that and we have this. All of us have these things. So I'm not saying I'm the bad guy and nobody else deals with this. But we cope with pressure, with problems. We cope with failures or disappointments in certain ways. And I think there are times where I know there's times when I coped by eating. Just, hey, I'm hungry. Give me something to eat. Give me something to eat. And then about it's maybe 5 or 8 years ago now, I don't remember, I realized my doctor, in fact, is the one that told me, he said, hey, I was getting ready to go on a trip. And she was like, hey, you're 40. I forgot now. It seems like I was 42. I don't know. Point is, she was like, you're way overweight and you're getting ready to go on like blood pressure medicine or something. I'm like, that's crazy. And I stepped on the scales and it blew my mind. And I immediately that day stopped drinking sodas, sweet tea. I gave up beef. I gave it up for about 5 years. I eat a little bit every once in a while now. But the point is, I immediately dropped about 10 or 15 pounds. And then I started walking more. And then I worked outside more. So staying sharp isn't just for your mental. It's all kind of combined. It's spiritual, mental, and physical. So that's the way I do it. Obviously, I read every day. I've got books. My my goal is to read every day, not only the Bible but other things. And so I will read books of all ways, shapes, and forms. I very seldom get any fiction books in now. I just don't have time for them. I love them. I mean, I like old Louis L'Amour books and stuff, but I don't have time to deal with it. And so I've read probably most of his books, but now I'm reading more educational, more leadership books, more ministry books, things that really sharpen me mentally. And lastly, now this is a weird one I'm fixing to throw out there for some of you. I sharpen my axe by talking and dealing with people with what I would call contrarian views. I have a certain way of thinking. I have a certain way of doing things. And it's good for me. It really is good for me to talk to someone with views that are different from mine. Now, I'm going to say it in this way. I do it in a safe manner. I do it with people that I believe are really living for God, people that are doing good things. My favorite person to talk to with a contrarian view is my wife. she's she she's a firstborn female, and she's got a very black and white way of looking at life, and I am that middle child male peacemaker, so to speak. She's the the rule follower, and I'm the peacemaker. And so we talk, and I hear what she says, and it blesses me because I sometimes when we talk, and sometimes I'm right and sometimes she's right. Sometimes we're both right. It's just that it sharpens me. So good communication with others is also in there. I hope that makes sense, but that's the way I do it. What's some of the other views that you got?
Well, we've don't have a whole lot of comments in the comment section so far, sadly. But let me put it this way: for those that are watching, we've got 14 people that are online right now. Tell me, when was the time where you did something that you felt the most refreshed? Let's just say that you may have not have sharpened your axe in many years, because this happens. This is a natural thing for you to go in, day out, grinding away, hustling away to put food on the table, put money in the bank, take care of your wife and kids or your husband, whatever it is we just continue to do and do and do and do, and we don't replenish ourselves, and we don't take time for what the psychologists say is self-care. And so when was the time, and feel free to put it, was it a vacation? Was that something that you went out or you went camping? For me, I know whenever I go to St. Louis for school and I come back, on my way back, I usually stop at Gunner's Pool in Arkansas, and in between two mountains, there's a stream, and that's a place where I can sit down. I get there about 5 o'clock in the evening. There's no cell phone coverage. I can sit there. I can read. I can think. I can pray, and I go to sleep early, and I wake up early the next morning. And it's not like I wake up early begrudgingly. I wake up early because, man, I went to sleep early. I feel really fresh. I get back on the road and I drive the rest of the way. And that is one of those times where I feel like I have been the most fresh coming out of something like that.
Yeah.
Deanna, go ahead.
Let me throw this in there. I think at different ages, we have to deal with different ways to sharpen our axe.
Right.
When I was young, had a bunch of kids, man, it was so hard to find time alone, to find time to, spend time just dwelling on things and refreshing yourself. Now I'm older. I'm 51. I don't have kids here all the time. I got grandbabies some, but it's different. So I think each person in each phase of their life has to find that windshield time, as I said. One of my favorite times was when I was a young man. When I was your age, in fact, one of my favorite things was to go between air conditioning calls or between, towns where we lived and towns where I worked, or maybe go on a road trip. I just loved that. No radio back the day before we didn't have cell phones. No distractions, and just drove and dwelt on things. That's but as I get older, it's going to change some more.
Right.
I'm sure it will.
Well, in the comment section, we've got some who are saying scrapbooking with their closest friends.
Yeah, yeah,
We've got road trips, things like that, where those are wonderful times to replenish yourself if done correctly. I could imagine some scrapbooking moments where you'd rather pull your hair out, depending on the person there, the situation. But self care is definitely a very important thing when we consider our body as the temple of God, and we consider
right.
ourselves as being the one thing that we can somewhat control in life. Self discipline, self control. When we realize and come to grips with, I cannot control this person, my child, whoever it may be. I've put everything I can into them, but you know what? I need to put some time into me, and that needs to start early. Do your best, obviously, raise your children, but there will come a time when you realize that you are the one that you've got to live. Don't run yourself into the ground.
Well, your kids will leave. There's something to be said of a husband and a wife, or I hate to just speak about husband and wife, but
Right.
there's something to be said that you maintain your relationship with your spouse, but realize your children, they're not always going to be there. They're going to get other interests. They're going to get another spouse or whatever. They're going to go other places, and you're going to be stuck. So,
Right.
and I don't mean to quote, say stuck,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to be there without them. So you still have to have a life when they're gone. Because if they leave, you don't want to fall apart. You want to be strong mentally, physically, spiritually, be able to be a blessing to them, even from afar, wherever you can do, and help other people, not just your family, grandchildren, family, friends, church people. Those are all places that you can invest yourself as you maintain your own mental energy and your spiritual peace, if you will.
Right. I agree completely. So that's what I have there. Real quick in the comment section, go ahead and fill in the blank or fill in the comments with what you believe a black swan is. So without Googling it, because we're about to go into that topic. If Pastor would go ahead, introduce us
Yeah.
to that, let us know where we're about to go.
Well, so we'll give people a chance to tell what they think a black swan is without looking it up on the internet. Okay, don't look it up. Just tell me what you think it is. But before we do that, I want to say that one of the things that I have accomplished recently is finished, my master's degree, and I think that's one other way that you talk about refreshing, or sharpening the axe of your life. I think getting your education and continuing an education throughout your life, not necessarily school, but just reading, inputting information and experiences. That's another thing that we need to consider. I kind of preached around it on Sunday. We can't live our life vicariously through someone else. We've got to
Right.
eventually come to the conclusion that if we're going to really experience life, it's going to be us doing it. And so, me going to school was a hard thing, hard choice. Cost money, cost time, great sacrifices, and I mean great sacrifice. When I really wanted to be doing something else, I was doing school work. That's another area that I think we all can benefit. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not just a benefit to me, but if I do this right, I get my education, I get experiences, and then I invest. Like in my son, you're my son. All
Mm-hmm.
my life, I've invested those experiences and that education in you, hopefully to enhance your life,
Right.
help you to realize that as a person, my many mistakes, and I pray that those mistakes were even a blessing to you. So my or I could say poor experiences, not necessarily mistakes, but poor experiences. But anyway, there is the blessings of that education, the blessings of all that information, the
Well,
blessings of experience. But then there's the cost, and you've got to weigh those out, the risk and reward, and determine your future. How do you want your future to look? Do you want your future to continue to look the way it is, or do you want to be have more ability to make an impact, to have influence on the next generation. And I've chosen personally, my life goal is not to get rich or to be popular. I don't, that's nothing that don't even cross my mind. My life's goal is to be an influence, a good influence, to
Mm-hmm.
leave a great legacy on the next generation. And that is, of course, first through the church. And then, of course, I say only through the church, but church and my family and anybody that I can help. I want to be a blessing. So
Right.
now let's go to the Black Swan.
And I would say real quick
Okay.
that by doing these things, you have challenged other generations by not falling into the despair of those bad experiences, because you could easily fall prey to that
Oh
and
yeah.
never advance. And I think it's challenged me as your son to say, you know what, I haven't experienced nearly what you have, but I haven't let even my small failures keep me from advancing and just progressing. And I think life is like that. A couple comments down here before we move too far. Dana Mears, I'm jealous. My Aunt Dana, you're in the Ozarks right now. She said that she is out there doing Bible study. She's praying. She's taking time sharpening
Yeah.
her axe. That's awesome. Her and her husband, deer hunting, Ed Schules,
Yeah.
Beverly Smith, talking about driving to rural areas, doing
Yeah.
home health. This is a place of peace in the country for her. So, anyways, I thank y'all for making those comments. This is stuff that I'm a little jealous. Ed Schules hunting, Dana out in the Ozarks, doing everything I wish I could do.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you've done that before.
Oh,
You're just
yeah.
not doing it now.
I know. I wish I
So
could do it every day.
I know. One of the things that we have with the internet nowadays, the social media, is we see everybody's great experiences
Yes.
individually, and it all makes this big picture like everybody's going here doing that. Not everybody. It's
Right.
just a few people are doing it right now.
I'm missing out. Yeah.
Yeah.
FOMO.
FOMO, fear of missing
Right.
out. FOMO. You know, um, we don't stay on this enhanced high. I'm I don't know what other word you say. We don't stay always sharpening our axe. We don't always
Mm-hmm.
stay fishing, hunting, riding a tractor, going on road trips, and that's my language. Other people have
Mm-hmm.
different languages, but it's kind of like a love language we speak. I forgot the guy's name that wrote the book, but it's the love languages we speak, and those things. Each one of us have our different ways, but I think that it can't be. We just got to be careful that it's not self-serving.
Oh,
That
yeah.
as we sharpen our axe, we've got to realize that the world doesn't revolve around me and nor my generation. So my desire, and I don't think that I'm preaching to anybody or trying to straighten anybody out. I just think that we need to realize that us being sharp is not about us being sharp.
Mm-hmm.
It's about us investing in other people, caring for other people, and taking care of life. I know I think you said Beverly Smith said she likes to do home health, but driving the back roads as she does that. Man, when she walks into a home with somebody that is, in need of
Right.
caregiving and she's fresh, and then she pours herself into
Mm-hmm.
them. That is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
The product of a sharp axe.
Yes, yes, really, really blessing someone.
Yeah. Well, feel free to go ahead and we can move to the next topic if you want to
Okay,
do that.
okay, yeah. I'm gonna say let's go on to the Black Swan, and this is kind of a weird one. This is something, the Black Swan event. Let me just speak to you from memory, and I'll go from there. And you can look it up, of course, on Google or whatever. The Black Swan, I think it's called a theory. I believe it's the Black Swan theory. It is basically a metaphor from, I want to say, a Latin story. And basically, this was back, I mean, way back 2,000 years ago. They didn't think, for some reason, they did not think there was any black swans. Well, then they just thought all swans were white. And then they discovered there was a black swan. And it was so astounding to them that it made them go back and rethink what they perceived as was normal.
1697. That's
Oh
right.
well, I was way off then. So, but it was this event that just did not fit with the pattern. And what we are seeing today in COVID-19, I believe, is a black swan event. Now, I forgot the guy's name, Nassim Talib, I believe it is. He's an economist, and I believe he's at like University of New York or University of Boston. He's an economist, and he spoke. He's the one that perceived the black swan theory based on economy. Now, I think that same principle can be applied to all of life, but the black swan theory, and you need to probably study it yourself. I studied it, but it's been several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it basically is where a culture or a society has to reevaluate what is possible and what's not possible, what has happened and how we perceived what has happened, and then what is obviously changing. So we're in, I believe, a what I would call a black swan event, and that is it. Come along with, I mean, just think about this: Christmas of 2019. No one thought we would be where we're at today.
Right.
You know, everybody's making plans to do this, to do that, to go here, to go there, and nobody saw this coming. And all of a sudden, this, I'm going to say, this black swan event happened. And now it's making us all reevaluate what's important, what's not important, how we perceive life, how we perceive our money, all these things. And you've got that combined with, obviously, a social reevaluation, an economic reevaluation, even a spiritual reevaluation going on in our world right now. You've got leaders. Our president Trump is one of them, but you've got leaders that are they're not afraid to really aggressively attack one another publicly. They're not afraid to defend what they believe. And you and I were talking about the Chinese, how they are so underhanded about so many things that we think they're being unethical or immoral, but they don't even think like that. They think, oh, we're just doing things normal. But we have to defend our way of life, our capitalism, our freedom, our independence. And so we are aggressively, I look at, okay, I'm going somewhere where I don't know if anybody sees this coming, but we're not only in a trade war, an economic war, or an economic survival situation, but I believe we're kind of aiming towards, it looks to me like we might even be headed towards a literal war, a physical war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're constantly tit for tat, back and forth right now. And it looks to me like nobody's backing down. China's not backing down. China's not taking responsibility for the virus, and they're not backing down. They're trying to win influence. I sent you some pictures earlier today about let me see if I can find one of them, about the ways that China uses their influence. And it's a triangle. It's upside down triangle. And it's China's toolbox. And I got this from the Freedom House. China's toolbox for global media influence. Now, why do we want to have influence? Why does anybody want to have influence? We want to change or modify their perception and their behavior. That's all we're wanting to do. We want to change or modify someone's perception or behavior. That's why we want influence. I want influence so that people will live for God, that will be ethical and moral, that they will be freedom-loving, independent thinking, passionate and compassionate people. That's my desire. That's what I want to use my influence on. America as a whole, and I know there's exceptions, and there's always these little weird things that we've done, or I should say stupid things we've done. As a whole, America has always wanted to be a guardian of independence, a guardian of freedom, and we've wanted to help other countries find freedom to get out from under dictatorships and things like that. China, on the other hand, is in it to win it. I mean, they want to be, period. They want to be the ruling country in the world, and they want communism everywhere. They want an elite leadership to have everything organized and everybody in submission, and that's what they're doing. So what they're doing is they're I don't know, peddling influence, and they're using, and this is only one person's or one organization's expression of what they're wanting, but
Through Freedom
you can see
House.
their propaganda, their censorship, and their content delivery. They want to be number one in everything. We want, you and I were talking about this. We want to have freedom and independence.
Priority. Number one priority.
Yep.
Right.
That's our number one. Them, on the other hand, they want control and communism. It's pretty simple. So I think that in the past, we've had leaders that have been willing to negotiate with China. But we've got to realize this. This is very important. China, you don't negotiate with China in the way that you would negotiate with someone else in this room or in the U.S. It's just a totally different animal. We're looking, and sadly, and I hate to say this, but this is the way it is. We as Americans look 5, 10, 15 years down the road, maybe 30 and 40 years down the road, and it's all about us, me, because we're so independent thinking. China is this, oh, my mind just went blank. It is this cohesive nationalism, and it's one, so everybody is working for one goal. What is that called? My mind's blank.
I know they have a rich history, and it's
Yes.
been going for 1,500 years.
Yes.
And
Confucianism.
a lot of pride.
All that.
Right.
So they are wanting to control and manipulate everyone. And again, like I said, they want everything. It's kind of a weird way of looking at it, but I would say this. It's kind of like having, and please forgive me, firstborn children. It's kind of like having that firstborn child is China, wanting to control everybody and everybody follow the rules, period. And we're like that, that baby that wants to have freedom and do what we want to do, and we're willing to rebel to get it. So you've got these two competing thoughts that are the most influential in the world, and we're competing for other nations' interest, obedience, whatever. Even allies. We want England as an ally. We want Spain as an ally. Well, China is wanting entire continents. They want Africa as an ally, South America as an ally. And what they're doing is they're using their money, their influence, their manufacturing, their population to control these situations. I gave you a slide.
1.4 billion.
Put it up. It's that egg that one egg over there.
Okay.
When you get it up, that you'll see on this slide. It's a picture of the world, and there's one egg over there that shows India and China, and then of course the Indonesian area, Thailand, and all that kind of stuff. That is actually half of the world's population living inside of that egg. That's hard to believe when you see that.
Hard to think about. Wow.
Did you find it? Did you find the
Yes,
picture?
yes.
That is, you look at that egg, half of the world's population lives in that area. So here we are. We think we're special. We think we're hot. We think we're all this and that, and bag of potato chips too. But look at what our population is: 365 million people. What is that? 1/8 of the population. Whereas India is 2 billion, and I'm rounding out. China is another 2 billion. Then you have all the other Asian countries, and everything. I went to Lowe's today, and it was crazy. Everything I looked at was made in Taiwan, Vietnam, or China, and most of it was made in China. What we're doing is we are peddling, and I hate to use that word, but America is we're peddling our prosperity and our freedom as an enticement to other countries to help them to see our way of life is better, adopt our way of life, and you'll be prosperous. But we are dependent upon the cheap labor of other countries. Asian countries. And it looks like it's fixing to backfire on us. And I don't mean to I'm not an anti-American. I love America. Mm-hmm. But I believe because we have put so much of our manufacturing in the hands of Asian countries that we're at the point to where it's going to backfire. Now, this is what I only perceive, and I can back it up with just things that I've read and listened to on news and things like that. But this is what I perceive. I believe, and one of my topics tonight is this. We're going to talk about looking out 20 years, planning for 20 years out. I believe that what we're going to see is we're going to see a little bump, if you will, economic happiness. I'm not sure that's the best way to. We're going to get some money in the bank. We're going to keep our jobs, and everything's going to be okay for the next 6 months to a year. But I believe in a short order, in a short amount of time, we're going to see this cold, like the old Cold War of the 70s and 80s. We're going to see a cold economic war, a cold trade war, where our agreements that we sign with each other, our agreements that we sign with China, they're not going to be worth the paper they're printed on, because China thinks so differently than us. They think they have, and you said this. This is from you. You read this recently, and this is just the way it is. They don't think anything. They don't see anything wrong with taking our products and reverse engineering everything we do and putting their stamp on it.
Right.
They have no problem with that, and it's costing us. We are technologically more advanced. We're the dreamers. We're the ones that perceive and conceive of
creative
things that really. Mm-hmm. Say it again.
Very creative.
We're very creative people, but and they are more mechanical, and so they'll take what we have created, take it over there. That's why I hear back. Seems like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, they had a jet that went down and they stole it.
A few more years than that, I believe.
Was it?
I think so.
But they stole it, and now we're finding that they're using our technology against us.
The drones, I know that. You're right.
Yes. So there's a lot of things. Now, like I said, I went to Lowe's today, and I talked to someone. I didn't talk to him. We were exchanging information. Someone that knows, and I'll just say a big box store similar to Lowe's, they're getting to the point to where there's things in their store that they're not going to restock because of this cold trade war. I don't know if that's really a term that we can use, but it's a trade war that isn't perceived as a trade war yet. And it's crazy because, like, nobody thinks when you walk into Lowe's that half the stuff there is made in China. But you think about this. You want to build a house. About half of our steel products come from China. And I'm talking about not just beams, but screws and nails.
Fasteners and right.
Yeah. So you can't even build a house without their products. And how many companies in America are really building these things or really making these things? Now, I'm not a doom and gloom person. And it really embarrasses me to talk too much doom and gloom. So I believe that we're going to get through it, but I also believe it's going to be a 10-year, 15, maybe even a 20-year process. And that's if we don't go to physical war. So I would throw this out there for everybody, anybody that would listen to me tonight, whoever it is, or on YouTube later. I still think it's very, very important that we keep our house in order and realize the value of quality and realize the value of looking ahead, planning 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 200 years ahead. I know that God could come back. I do realize this. I'm not ignorant. I love the Word of God, and I believe God could come back right now. I know there's people, and I'm not here to argue with anybody, but there are people that say, oh, well, this got to be done, this got to be done, this got to be done before God comes back. I don't disagree with them. When you look through their eyes at the scripture, they're right. But then when you look at another person through their eyes at the scripture, they're right. And it's like, I'm not God. I don't know the day or the hour. Now I do see the season. And that's what scripture said. Scripture said we can look at a tree and know its summer's coming, the same way with when he's coming back. And so I believe we're in this time period that God is getting close to returning for his people. But so rephrase that. So we have to live like he's coming back today. But our days, our years are not God's days and years.
Right.
So we need to plan as if we're going to be here 100 years. And, live like we're going to be here 100 years. Exercise like you're going to be here 100 years. Exercise your mind, your spirit. Be right with God like you're going to be here for 100 years. So I just think that we as individuals and as a whole, we have to keep our act sharp in every way. Speaking of products and I'm going back a little bit, speaking of products that are made in China that would, if you think about this, in fact, I would ask our audience, what products, I want you to answer this in the comments. What products made in China, if you couldn't get them now, would it really hurt your life? Would it be a negative impact on your life? Think about that for a minute. From what I can tell, most shoes, not all, of course, you can get Crocs. I don't know where they're made. I think they're made in Taiwan. Everybody be wearing Crocs to church. But most shoes, steel products. I gave you another picture of the things that are mostly made or exported from China, and that is electronics. But you think about this, electronics. You say, oh, well, I won't have my cell phone. Yeah, but it's more than that. This cell phone, this computer, parts for my car, they're made in China. I'll tell you what, there is a factory, I'm trying to think of the name of the town out in North Carolina. I think it's called Scott something in North Carolina, outside of Laurinburg. I forgot the name of it. There's a Campbell's soup factory there. Man, that thing is a mile long. It's crazy. Huge factory producing canned soup. When I went to China, I saw that plant, and I've only seen a couple of them. There's a Mercedes plant outside of Bessemer, Alabama. I think it's Bessemer. Anyway, outside of Alabama. Mile and a half too long. It's crazy huge. When I went to China about 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, those size factories were everywhere. It blew my mind. Everything that you can imagine. I mean, factory after factory, miles long. It's just incredible at how much power they have really over the world because we're dependent upon them. That's what's happening. So what products? Let me see if I can tell. I'm trying to find out what iPhone, prescription medicine. One of the problems that we have with COVID-19 is because a lot of our medicines are made over in China. My wife said the iPad, isn't that true? Her own iPad that we're watching it on. Maintenance medications, diabetes, things like that, generic medications, computers, electronics, even some of our, and more of an influence. And I think you and I know this more than anybody. I say more than anybody. We know this probably more than most people. A lot of our cars and motorcycles that we're importing now are starting to come from China. And we like them because they're cheap. So it's starting to hurt us. It's going to come back it's going to backfire. I was going to say bite us in the, but but yeah, that's where we're at. And the Black Swan event that I was talking about, I believe it has exposed some weaknesses and some things in our lives that we're all of a sudden having to reevaluate. Now, on a spiritual context, my wife and I, uh, we have we have discovered there's some pretty awesome things that was brought on by COVID-19. Some things that have really been a blessing. Things that used to, and I'm just giving an example, and I hate to give this example. Might not need to give this example, but I'm going to give this example.
Go ahead. You're going to do it
We
anyways.
used to go on Sunday. Sunday, we would go to church. We would get there at 8 o'clock, and we went to church practically all day. We'd have an hour or two between services. We'd go back up there, and I'm telling you, we would. It was not uncommon, if you will, to have a 20-hour day. I mean, just all day long, because we talk to people and minister to people and deal with people. I said 20 hours. That's probably stretching a little bit. 16 hours anyway. Literally 16 hours. But, we've discovered that there's a whole lot of value in spending time with God, just in prayer and relaxing and that kind of thing. So you have to, in other words, what I'm trying to say is we are all reevaluating how we have acted because of COVID-19. But now we're also having to reevaluate what we're dependent upon. What is important to us. And now, just since COVID-19 happened, this black swan event, that's what I'm calling it, and I don't know of an economist that said it is yet, but that's my opinion. This black swan event now has caused so much market disruptions. I heard Monday, I think it was Sunday night, JCPenney's filed bankruptcy. About 2 weeks ago, Neiman Marcus filed bankruptcy. There's somebody else. I forgot who else. These people are filing bankruptcies because they didn't have enough cash set aside for these crazy events. And that's another area that I believe we're going to see a different generation come along. I believe we're going to start seeing more savers than spenders. In the past, we've spent 90% of our money, and saved 10%. Of course, I'm not going details and all
If that.
Giving this, giving that. But I really think we're going to start seeing people. I think my wife told me, and I heard it brief of it today. Only about 20%, I believe it is, or 15% of restaurants are going to survive in some areas. New York, 15% of their restaurants are going to survive. That's a big hit. How many people are going to start saying, you know what, I don't have to spend that money going out to eat. I can be just as full with a sandwich,
Oh, yeah.
So it changes. This stuff is changing. This is a black swan event, in my opinion. It's changing
definitely.
everything, and we didn't see it coming.
From the research I've seen, they concluded that 9/11 black swan event, the housing crash 2008 black swan event.
That's right.
If those are black swan events, this is huge compared to those things.
I agree. I think we're going to one economist, and I don't remember which one it was. Sadly, it was just a little excerpt out of a news piece that I saw on Twitter, and he believed, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. I think Americans. Okay, let's talk about Americans for a minute, and then I'll tell you what he said. Americans want things to be normal. We want things to be normal so bad we can taste it. And so for the most part, we're acting normal. Some things are a little awkward, but we're trying to act normal. But this economist was saying that I wish I'd have saved that article. Anyway, he believes, I wish I could remember him. Let me think about that for a minute. But he believes that this actually will be a 10-year depression, that it's going to take us 10 years. Now, obviously, it's not all going to be, sink to the bottom, but it's going to take us 10 years to recover, and that's only economically. what he's not looking at, and what we all do need to look at. Life is more than in economics. Life is war. Life is peace. Life is living for God. Life is our next generation. Life is having babies. Life is getting married. So I know that he's perceiving it through that one more or less myopic view of the economy. And if he's right, it's going to influence every other area of our life. So I think looking ahead 10, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, if you are in the market to buy a vehicle or to buy shoes or to buy clothes, I think you would do yourself good by buying the best quality that you can afford. And I'm not saying go break the bank, okay? So I'm just saying that there are knowns and there are unknowns. And even our knowns are really not that known. But there are known expectations, and then there are unknown things. And all I'm saying is we've got to look through the lens that some of the things that we see that are possibly coming up could be very devastating on our way of life. And if we buy a cheap pair of shoes, they won't last through whatever happens, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah.
Okay. So I just think that anybody that would listen to me tonight, I've got a small audience here tonight, but if anybody would listen to me tonight, you need to get your house in order, okay? But keep it in order, and then look 20, 30 years down the road. Not just at retirement. For me, of course, it's kind of weird. My sister, she was listening to this earlier. I don't know if she's still online, but she turned 54 this week. And that blew my mind, because I'm thinking I'm fixing to be 52. And what really blew my mind is I'm fixing to be 52, and I can literally start drawing my retirement at 62. That's 10 years from now. I'm not ready to retire. I won't be ready 10 years from now. So it's just weird. But I think when I talk about looking ahead 20 years, this is really more important. We're not talking about just finances. We're talking about leaving a legacy, leaving something that people can say good about us at our funeral, leaving a legacy, things that I would say really matter, making a difference in other people's lives, helping. Now, this is another topic entirely. We don't need to be enablers. We're not talking about enabling people. People in having problems, people doing dumb things. If we're dumb, we'll be enabling them. But we need to reward good behavior and reward morality, ethics, reward good thinking. So we've got to be, and I would be very hard for me today if someone asked me, well, how do you do that? It's a private conversation that I'd really rather have than one over the radio like this or the internet like this. But I do believe that we need to find ways to influence the next generation to be a good generation.
Right.
Okay.
I agree completely.
So what did people comment on? What would they miss made in China?
All right, so we've got clothes, high-tech computers, and then what we've previously mentioned about generic medicines, that kind of thing. Those are the main things. Mom said Cheesecake Factory. I think that was to one of the companies that were closing down.
Yep.
So Dana is still here with us. I know you mentioned her turning 54. Happy birthday, Aunt Dana.
Yep.
But yeah, the world will be different.
Yeah. We're going. I think this is a time, and I'm a pastor, so I'm going to just throw this out there because it's the way it is. I think you would have to be an idiot to not live for God right now. And I mean that. I don't mean to be rude, but you would just have to not be you would have to be blind to think that right now is not a good time to live for God. It is just I just too many things around us. I'll throw in some ingredients that we talked about earlier. Daniel chapter 12 says the end time will be where people will be traveling to and fro and knowledge will be increased.
That's where we're at.
Wow. You
Right.
think about that. Look at where we're living at right now. And you know, to combat, and I don't want to, I'm not obviously combating, but to go against some perception that this is not a pandemic. It is a pandemic, but it's just a pandemic. Just because it's worldwide and it's a pandemic doesn't mean that it's every corner of the world, every nation, every family. It means if I was to put it like this, give me an example. And this is a percentage that I read yesterday, so I'm pretty much on top of this one. 62% of the COVID-19 cases have happened in the DC New York corridor and Chicago. 62%. So we've got 1.5 million cases, and that's round numbers. Almost all of them, 62%, 1 million of them, were in that New York to DC and Chicago area. That is, whether we like it or not, a pandemic, and people are dying. It's a real pandemic. It's just that, and again, this black swan theory makes us reevaluate after the fact. Oh, wait, we should have done this, or oh, wait, we should have done that. Well, now we realize, I even realize it. I realize it, and I'm a talking head. It's just they treated this as if the whole world was going to be affected, and it ended up not being the whole world or the whole United States, and it ended up not being the whole United States. Now we know, but will that make us think about the next pandemic less of the next pandemic? In other words, if another pandemic come along, say 5 years from now, or let's just say a year from now, somebody says, hey, a second wave of COVID-19 is coming out. Will we, for the most part, go, yeah, whatever. We've been there, done that before. We don't care. And then if it is bad, how will we respond? That's just the way we are. Our nature doesn't perceive some things that are coming. We have that normalcy bias, and we like it. We want it to stay. That's why we're driving so hard to get back to normal now, because we like normal. We like routine. So I'm boring everybody. I'm sorry.
Well, we're almost out of time anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But I did notice, I did notice on the news that COVID-19 in China, they've locked down over 108 million people recently. That came out today. So interesting. So you never know when we feel like we could be past it, beyond it.
Right.
You never know. Clusters come up, lives change, and if you don't think you were hit by it, okay, well, just be aware that it can affect you, and it can affect your family, that kind of thing. So,
That's right.
anyways, any last words, Pastor?
No. No. That's funny. Okay,
But
so let me go back and look at some things. I want to throw this out there for those of you, and I've got. Okay, I'm not one of those academic, all head, no common sense people. I love common sense, and I think I've got a small dose of it or some dose of it. I like to
Thomas
think
Paine.
that anyway. Say it again.
Was it Thomas Paine, Common Sense?
Yeah, Thomas Paine, exactly. His book. It's a good book,
Yeah.
by the way. I read it. It's booklet. It's not a book. The value of education. Let me explain. If you're a parent or whatever, if you've got children or whatever, or you're thinking about going back to school, let me explain to you education. Education brings options. That's all it does. It does not guarantee a paycheck. It does not guarantee anything. It just brings options. But if you put your education with your grit, your determination, your drive, you put those things together, then you have opportunity. Education brings options, but you put it together with your character, then you have opportunity. And the opportunity that I'm looking for, and I'm not being weird about this. The only reason why I went to school is because I want to make an impact on the next generation. I want to have influence. That's it. So there are people that, look at me and say, well, you're a pastor. You ought to be satisfied in that right there and just leave that other stuff alone. I understand that. I understand the logic behind it. But my logic and my life, what would you call that? My life's desires dictate to me that I've got to push myself to do more so I can help other people more. And so I just think that the reason why I brought that up is because I think there are people that struggle. Well, it costs a lot of money to go to school. Well, it costs a lot of money to be dumb.
It does.
So you just got to weigh out. You got to weigh the cost and the benefits. You got to do a cost benefits analysis. You've got to decide, is this something that is going to be worth it to me? I've had, I didn't tell a lot of people that I was going to school, and wasn't supposed to tell anybody that I was graduating. My wife did that. But I've had several, a bunch actually, young people, and even young married families and stuff come up to me and say, such things as, it really helps me to know that you did this at your age because I've really struggled with going back, or my son or my daughter has somebody to look to that they can say, well, if he can do it, I can do it. You know what I'm saying? So that makes it worthwhile, not just the challenge, but I don't want to get to 62 years old and say, okay, now it's time to sit back, relax on my front porch and do nothing. I plan on burning out somewhere around 98 to 100, right in there. And that's just what, why not? I got 50 years. Think about that.
Don't burn out too soon. Go back to self-care.
I've got 50 more years, possibly, of course. 50 more years. I know I'm going to school at 50 years old. That's weird. That's radical. But I've still got 50 years in front of me to use it.
Right.
To influence people. So anyway, I'll close down. Sorry for bothering everybody. That's a weird topics tonight.
No, I think that's certainly an inspiration to many, and whether it be through trade school or whether it be through your formal education or just simply non-formal. I hold a lot of respect for people who I've met along the years that have simply made an effort to read a book every month or study certain topics and become an expert on that topic, even without getting a degree in it. And so there's many ways of progressing and pushing yourselves and challenging yourself that can be an inspiration for those who are looking to them, whether that be a young person or just a fellow man or woman who says, man, I've always had all these excuses, but you seem to have broken past every excuse I've ever had. That is something that pushes the barriers, pushes past everything. And so anyways, I'm glad that you have done it as my dad, and you've encouraged me to go ahead and get some kind of an education before I get older. But I'm glad you're doing it. I'm thankful that you've got it.
I think I would go back there and help people to realize, if I'm right about the next 10 years, a trade, just a trade school education or a picking up a trade
could be the most valuable.
Mm-hmm. You might be the wisest guy on the block before.
Oh yeah, best paid man there, best paid woman, having the skills. Yep.
Yeah.
So progress, move forward, sharpen your axe, take the time. It's not all about hammering away, trying to knock down every tree you can, but sometimes it's about taking the time and sharpening the axe. Don't worship the axe, but use it as a means to an end. So anyways, thank you for watching tonight, all of you who've joined us for over an hour. We've enjoyed it. I know I have. Just enjoyed talking with Pastor Castleberry here. So next week, join us again Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. If you have any topics, anything that you want to talk about, hear us discuss. And we want you, as always, keep the comment section going. We love to see what's going on, what you're thinking live as we're talking, because that's the purpose of live video. We're able to see what's going on. So next time, Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, we want to see you again. Have a great night, and God bless you.